I didn't ask you, man. How are you feeling today, bro? How are you feeling?
Man, I'm feeling really good. I've had some good progress on some projects and
Yeah.
had some time to sort of organize my mind and get some things on some sticky notes and things like that. Met some cool people too. There's some people in town, so it's been chill.
Nice.
It's been real chill in comparison to what it seems like your day has been like, man. Like,
Yeah.
I don't know. Like, I feel a little bad about the
You shouldn't.
that
You
disparity.
definitely shouldn't.
Well, yeah,
Yeah.
but otherwise, man, I'm good. What about you?
All right.
How are you?
I fucks with the sticky notes, man. I'm all about the sticky notes. You know what I mean?
This-
It's literally how I live my life, one sticky note at a time, you know?
I swear there's something about getting ideas and concepts out onto a thing in front of my face that, I mean, it's just like, okay, cool. I can rely on that. I can go back to that, but I don't need to keep it in here,
100%.
floating around. Yeah. So that felt good. It's felt like a good day in that sense.
Hell yeah, man.
Yeah.
I'm doing good. I had a long day at with the full-time job as we know it, which will soon be, something else that I did. So I mean, it's great. I'm loving it. I'm trusting the process. I'm leaning into this thing, and I'm so excited about this.
Yeah.
And I have a super interesting question to ask you right now. You ready?
Let's hear it, dude. Let's hear this question.
So
what is it?
Here's what I want to talk to you about. This is what I've been pondering.
Okay.
I have some friends, I have some like cousins and stuff who are trying to find love. Like, does this sound like a familiar topic to you at all?
Yeah, no, a little bit, just a little bit.
Just a skosh. So how do you attract the right partner, Mike? How do you attract the right partner?
Oh, well, yeah, this is a great question. It piggybacks right off of the manifestation talk we've been having.
Definitely.
Dude, and you and I have talked about this before, but I mean, look, my view, my approach right off the bat is you can't try. You can't try to find that person. And as long as you are trying, you're not providing the space to yourself to actually notice that person. And that was my own personal experience for a very long time. Beyond that, I think that it's, no kidding, a unique experience for each person because we all have our own life story and circumstances. So
I would agree.
Yeah, that's my general first statement. But I'm curious. What are you thinking?
I think, So I like that you summarized that question, but you didn't answer it specifically, and I'm pointing this question at you. Because I mean, let's be honest. You're somebody who's recently found someone. We won't say who or their name or whatever, but found someone that you have expressed to me. I mean, that you care for deeply. So I'm curious to how you feel like you've attracted that partner.
Okay. All right. Yeah. I gave the summarization. I'll get more into the personal detail.
No, we go into the nitty gritty a lot. Not too much. Just to skim.
Yeah. You're right. Let's tap right into that. I found that within my experience with love, I have found this so far that I, for a long time, really wanted something that I couldn't really articulate it, but it was this feeling that I was chasing, and I didn't understand what that feeling was. I just knew that there's something off about the experiences I'm having now. It's not that. And anyway, through a wealth of experience and suffering, I think what I've come to realize is when it actually made sense, when the stars aligned, if you will, when things came together in a way where it was a clear indication that we were able to come together. It was when I wasn't thinking about it at all. I mean, it was when like I had fully leaned into my own shit, my own life, my own desires, my outside of love, because ultimately what I had to do was cultivate my own source of love within me first.
Wow.
And like, as soon as I did that, almost as soon as I did that, and no kidding, was, reframed towards, all right, here's what I'm going after. These are the things that I want to see happening in my reality. It was like, oh, hey, here's an opportunity to hang out with this wonderful person that, like out of the complete blue. And I was just like, oh, okay, great. And not that it's magic, but for me, it was a long time of recognizing that I was just trying way too hard to
Yeah.
like communicate
Yeah.
my feelings and to try and control the situation, with this
Yeah.
one person in particular.
Yeah. So I think that a lot of times like people get into relationships and they just try way too hard, like
Oh
you
yeah.
said.
Yeah.
And I think well, I would think that like a lot of people out there are probably trying to grasp at straws because they don't know what to look for.
Hmm.
But for most people, I think if you ask them, like, can you name for me 10 things that you want in a relationship,
Hmm.
right?
Hmm.
That you would absolutely have to have in a partner, they could probably do that.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I love the fact that they could summarize what it is that they're looking for.
Hmm.
So what's interesting is that Joe Dispenza, I love Joe
Oh yeah.
Dispenza, man.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
He's my jam. He
Hmm.
said this thing that I thought was really interesting. He said, if you take out a piece of paper and write down everything that you want in a person,
Hmm.
right? You have that on a piece of paper. You wrote down you want them to be financially successful, have a 5-year plan, maybe a
Oh,
house.
the whole persona. Yeah.
No, the
you
whole
make a
persona,
character.
no kids, shiny shoes, all this stuff, a nice car. You know what I mean? You don't want to
Hmm.
have roll down windows. And then you essentially have to become that.
Mm.
You
Right.
have to become the thing that you want in order to attract it to you.
Yeah. Yeah. Which is weird, isn't it? That
It's
idea.
strange. It's so very strange.
Like, here's my question, because this is something I'm familiar with. Um,
Yeah.
my question is like, why do we want the things that we're supposed to become? Like, what is that about? And why is it that we naturally are looking external to ourselves to get those things, like, organically? What is going on in our upbringings or culture or whatever? Like, what do you think's causing that?
I think we have an idea of what we want in an individual. Maybe it's something we saw in your favorite rom-com
Yeah. Yeah.
or your friend's marriage, like you're witnessing like their marriage relationship partner thing going on. And then you just pick the good qualities that you want. It's
Hmm.
like you go to the store, you get a bag of grapes, and you're like, these grapes are amazing. But like 1 out of the 10 that you got are gonna be squished or rotten,
Yeah.
but you just kind
True.
of push those to the side and eat the grapes. So you just find yourself picking up all of these traits that you love without
Mm.
ever self-evaluating
Mm.
what so how do I stack up to this thing that I want?
Yeah.
So what
Yeah.
did
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
find yourself asking like what because I can remember and I won't put you on a complete spot
Hey,
like
look, man, you can do whatever
um
you need to do, all right?
dude, I was telling you, when I first got into a relationship, I was damaged goods.
Uh-huh.
And I know what you're wondering, Mike. What does that mean? Like I was fucked up.
Just
Like I was no good.
yeah, just wholesale fucked up. Is that what we're hearing? Oh, man.
100%. They were like, "Come and get this boy because he got problems," and they were right. And then I was at the point where I didn't even know how to look inward
Yeah.
to give myself a system of checks and balances. Like I
Yeah.
didn't even understand emotional
Hmm.
intelligence.
Oh,
Like that to me was a thing of like, like a unicorn. I never seen a fucking
it's like a
unicorn, man. Like
like a fairy tale. Like, what? You can emotional intelligence? What?
right. So I'm guessing like at some point, like you definitely had to do this thing, right? Like it is
Yeah.
kind of figuring out who you are type
Yeah.
of thing.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think that for me, the things that I was attracted to for a long time were the things that I knew when it came to love, how it was
Mm,
modeled
okay.
in my life experience, and how that affected me in my life experience. So the things that I was looking for um, were things ultimately that came from just what I could know based on
Yeah.
my context.
Okay.
But beyond that, the funny thing is, like, those things also were things that, again, there was a potential for them to be inherent within me, and I was
Yeah.
not recognizing that. What I was doing was I was focusing on, like, I want someone to give me those things
Yeah.
and like fulfill those wants and desires that I might have for myself ultimately. You know what I mean? Because it's all about consuming that experience of that other person. Like,
Yeah.
I've had several relationships where, I mean, I was doing it, she was doing it, and it was this, the doing it was like we were just taking from each other, like give and take. There's the shallow stuff, but then primarily, you know, it was like I was like not being myself, not being boisterous. I was constantly catering to the other person because I wanted to make sure they felt comfortable so they could provide, you know, intimate connection and presence, and I wasn't abandoned. That was my
fatal
big
flaw.
thing. Yeah. And as it turns out, the best way to not be abandoned, or the best way to not be rejected or whatever, is to not abandon yourself and to not reject yourself.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Whoa. Can you say that one more time?
The best way to not be abandoned or rejected within relationship is to not abandon or reject yourself.
Wow.
I mean, that's kind of like what I've learned over time. And this was not just, oh, Mike figured it out. It was a lot of hard work, watching a lot of YouTube videos and listening to a lot of podcasts and talking to a lot of friends and being vulnerable and looking at myself and realizing like, wow, I really am afraid of this thing, this idea of abandonment, or I'm really like eager to have somebody who can emotionally support me when I'm anxious or nervous or scared. And that's just, it doesn't work that way. It didn't work for me. It was the thing that led ultimately to the ending of relationships. And I mean, basically the big lesson that I learned for myself, which it sounds like you learned for yourself too, was we have to realize that our experience of love, the thing that we're trying to manifest in another person, is already present here in our bodies. We have everything that we need. And I know that in a way that sounds like just fucking garbage.
Woo-woo.
You know, it's like, what does that mean? Like, what are you talking about? No, that's not true. Well, like, when I looked, like the best I can say is when I looked and really looked, like literally talked about it before, started like a practice of looking at myself in the mirror, of talking to myself in the future, like these weird things that, you know, in society are kind of deemed as like, what the fuck, why would you do that? But truly, when I started doing that, it allowed me to see some of this stuff and realize like, oh, wait, I can't need or rely on someone else to bring this energy into my existence.
Who are you telling?
And not even like I can't do that. It's like, why would you do that? Like, you have it here, you know?
Right. I got a question though. You said this thing about vulnerability. Like as a man, right? Let's get into this shit, because this is annoying a lot of times to me, dude. Like as a man in today's world and society, and even back when we were like not even thought of, you know, you're taught one of the first things is like, you better man up. Like you better don't act like a little, you know, whatever, child or whatever. You're an adult, like you got to hold your own and all this stuff. So the state of the vulnerability is kind of like not one of the things that comes to mind when you're being told all of these things that you're supposed to do. So I think for a long time, for me, being vulnerable was like this coveted thing that I was like, oh, this is cute. Like it was a gift somebody gave me. And I just took it and put it in a safe and lock that shit away. And I was like, no, absolutely not. You know what I mean? So how did you get to this state where you were like, or how would you recommend like people got to the state where they could be vulnerable to get that, to start the self-realization process and the self-reflection? What do you think? Like, what would you give like to somebody, some advice that was struggling with that? Guys even, you know?
Yeah. Well, I mean, from my own experience, I kind of came up in a world where being vulnerable was sort of a part of the societal context. Like within my experience of like the church, for example, there was a lot of humility, there was a lot of selflessness, there was a lot of like recognition of your faults and recognition of how you didn't measure up. So like having those conversations in a way, I suppose was a practice of vulnerability, but I don't believe that it was a healthy one. And in a way, it didn't help me understand this concept. It mainly just made me feel like shit, made me feel ashamed and guilty for things that I was doing and being, you know?
It's so interesting too, because in the church, like you would think that was probably one of the safest places you could be. It comes, and I always tell people this, I'm like, please don't judge church people. One of the reasons why I say that is because church people are going to church because they know they have some stuff being worked
Yeah.
out. You have to
Yes.
at least commend them for that,
Yeah,
right?
of course. I mean, going to church, like having a religious or spiritual, routine or practice, isn't in a way it's an introspective sort of thing,
It
but it
is.
can kind of stagnate and eventually becomes like weirdly clicky in the culture, and like people things happen, and judgment
Yeah.
happens, and that's not really helpful. Ultimately, vulnerability, I think, is the most profound when one does it like with oneself. Like you have to be vulnerable to yourself, and like what that means to me is it's just a looking and paying attention to how you're kind of like affecting other people, seeing like, oh,
Mm.
I said something and that person responded in a weird way, like instead of whatever, they're dumb, they'd be like, why did that happen? What did I say and
Yeah.
do? And
Ooh.
you're vulnerable to your own sort of self
Ooh.
analysis. But
Right.
but beyond that, I think the vulnerability that I've practiced has just been opening up. Like it's a similar thing, opening up to friends, and just having this recognition that there are things to be explored. Like
Yeah.
to me, it's like traveling to a different country. Like I would say for somebody who struggles with this particular aspect of life, being vulnerable, I would say go somewhere you've never been before.
Mm.
Specifically, maybe somewhere that it doesn't speak your native language. Because
Okay.
in my experience studying abroad, I traveled a bunch to a bunch of different places, and since then I've traveled a bunch to different all parts of the world. And you are extremely vulnerable when you
Mhm.
travel to a place where you can't communicate and where you don't know what's going on culturally. And that, as a sort of like a physical or like experiential example, is like, it's a cool metaphor. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. It definitely does. Well, I mean, it's all about putting yourself into a space where you're forced to be something other than you believe you are
Mm,
to be. So if we're, just completely like taking yourself out of your normal routine often throws you off. Like you have to create this different bond or connections in your brain, right? Like you
yeah.
have to fire different
Yeah. Yeah.
different emotions and different reactions because it's not your typical life. So
Yeah.
yeah, that makes perfect sense. It's the reason why like people I think travel, it's the reason why people read too, because
Hmm.
that in itself has them thinking on a larger scale.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's funny because you mentioned like this whole practicing like emotional vulnerability, right?
Hmm.
So there's also a thing that says that you, in order for you to kind of attract the relationship that you really want,
Hmm.
you have to practice this like diminishing your emotional reactions
Yeah.
to
Oh,
certain people. Yeah, right.
yeah, 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 yeah.
Yeah.
That's okay. So that's one that I feel like I became not a professional at. I was really good at making people think that I was a professional at this. Like as a people pleaser, like it was my duty to not let
Okay.
anyone know how they were actually making me feel. That stayed
Yeah.
inside, and so then I was in a sense completely hardened off to any sort of emotional
Yeah.
vulnerability, but at the same time was like, okay, whatever you think. Yeah. And I think like the emotional, like opening up to it, to with other people, like is extremely difficult for a lot of people. You,
Yeah.
you said that didn't, you had a really hard time with that. Like,
I did. Yeah.
how did you get through that? Like, what did you have an experience or like experiences that
This is
forced you out or
hilarious.
what?
Yeah. So I'm laughing because this has been like one of the most heaviest like hitting things in my whole life.
Mm,
So I had kind of a troubled and still do relationship with my father, and this is really personal for me. So
mhm.
thank you guys for providing me the space to be able to share this.
Heck yeah.
But for years, I've struggled with the relationship with my father. We just honestly we're just two different people,
Hmm.
and I couldn't deal with that and process that emotional wound that was still open, right?
Mm,
Because for years it just kind of bled and I fostered it with other negative ideas of what I thought I was supposed to be and then self destruction. of
Hmm.
myself.
Yeah.
So at some point, I would just like exercise became an outlet for me in order to kind of facilitate the release of these emotions that were just so damaging.
Yeah.
And so that worked for me for years
Hmm.
until it didn't.
Hmm.
And I at that point I had to do as you said, look at myself, like literally people look at myself in the mirror, and I would ask myself, I'd get into this loop where I'd be like, who are you?
Hmm.
Who are you? Who are you? And I would ask myself
Yeah.
50, 60 times, like,
Yeah.
who is the person I'm looking at? At one point, I didn't even recognize myself because I had let the emotional damage from my past create the person I was being in the present moment.
Yeah. Man, that's got to be something that so many people experience. And
Yeah.
so when you were looking in the mirror and you were asking yourself that question, that, I mean, to me, that's like the vulnerability thing right there. Asking
Yeah.
yourself, who are you? I mean, like we have these constructs in our mind, or like the concepts that we have for the way that our mind works, like the ego
Right.
and intuition, things like that. Asking who are you to your own self, to your, the part of you, the egoic part of you is probably fucking screaming, being like, shut the hell up, man.
Man.
You know exactly who I am. Like, this is that, I'm this, I'm strong, all these things. Like, there's not, it's not even a question. Who would ask that? And yet, dude, what you're tapping into is something I've seen elsewhere, as in like
Yeah.
like monks and like Eastern in Eastern philosophy and like in Zen Buddhism, like asking that question as a mantra is something that has been
Right.
done for centuries, because what it does is it like, you don't even have to try. It like starts and initiates this like process of looking that
Yeah.
is pretty profound and can be like quite scary. And that's, dude, that's the thing about vulnerability. It's like
Yeah.
really scary to do that.
It is. And I'll be honest with you guys, like when I would ask myself, who are you, like repeatedly, and again, this would be like 50 or 60 times in the mirror.
Mm-hmm.
Mike, when I tell you, like every time I asked it, I saw a different part of me,
Mm.
a person that I maybe had never acknowledged before. It
Wow.
was such an enlightening experience
Yeah.
that I didn't realize the power of what I was doing, but it was the initiation of
Yeah.
figuring out what the fuck was wrong with me, man. You know?
What did you discover? I mean, like when you were asking yourself that question and kind of putting yourself in that
Mm,
state of vulnerability, how did
yeah,
you start? How did you get to a point where you began to recognize the emotions that you
yeah.
needed to regulate and allow through? Like, what did that look like for you?
Yeah, it took me to the core cause of my self my self like harm, my
Mm,
self hurt. It made me look at what in fact was the opportunity that made me switch off some of my emotional, or regress in some of my emotional intelligence,
hmm.
and it made me take a hard look at the specific moment or specific moments that created this like monster that I was,
Hmm.
and it's through that like getting to the cause and saying, okay, I really need to deal with this if I want to be better.
Yeah.
And just like I would think, like anybody who's dealing with something that they're struggling with, like getting rid of trying to process out of their system, you have to come to the realization that you have a problem. And I knew I had a problem. I just
Yeah.
didn't know what it was.
That's the hardest part. I think
Yeah.
about it like you're walking in the pitch black and you're in some like forest and you keep hitting your feet on things, like they keep snagging, you keep tripping and falling, and you're like, I don't know what the hell is going on. Like, is that a root? Is that a rock? Like, what is that? But you can't see it. You know something's off. You're in a lot of stress, but it's just like your eyes are closed to it, and there's no way to get out of that hole. And this is something interesting that, like,
Mm.
you, that point is to me true. There is no way to get out by will. You have to just like allow it to continue, but
Yeah.
pay attention to it, and again ask those questions. Like something that I was experiencing when I was in New York, like when I lived in New York City, and I was experiencing like a good amount of darkness and depression. And in that time, there would be days where it'd just be waves of like deep emotional, like bodily pain. And
Yeah.
I did not know what to do with myself. My thought processes were jumbled. Like if I had any thoughts at all that I could even comprehend, like mostly it just felt so bad. And so when it
Yeah.
comes to this emotional regulation, when it comes to all this stuff we're talking about, being vulnerable and, you know, eventually attracting through this process, a person that's going to match you in where you're at.
Yeah.
There's like this question of how do you physically get through that? Like how like Joe Dispenza talks about, you got to switch it. Like there are these states of mind that we repeat, these cycles of these mental cycles that while we think we're allowing it to flow through, like actually we're just compounding something. Like it's compounding the state. We're practicing some emotion consciously or otherwise that is just that's ingraining within our system, and we don't even notice it. Like he said something in that video about how, like, if you're constantly guilty, like eventually your baseline of what is guilty goes to where you're at, and then that's you. It's not, you're not guilty, you're just you. And there's no way of recognizing that unless you realize looking outward or looking inward that, oh wait, no, it can be better, you know? And so like from a bodily sense, I'm curious, like how much do you think that fitness, like in a way, was necessary? And like, does your practice of moving your body and stuff still make an impact on you when it comes to your capacity to be aware of yourself?
Yeah, I think that's an amazing question, Mike. Because it's something that I've thought about for a long time.
Yeah.
And just a couple of weeks ago, I finally figured out what was happening. So there's a theory that you can create sickness in your mind. If you wake up, I think it's called hypochondriac. What is it? What do people call it?
Hypochondriac, like someone who does it. Yeah.
Exactly. They'll read something online and then in their mind, they'll say, I have this thing. And ultimately, what their mind will do is start to ingrain or entwine those things with their body, and they'll create the disease that they never initially had from reading this thing. So what I've realized is, like, a lot of people, they start with the mental health. They say, okay, what's wrong with me? What do I need to fix? Who wronged me? I need to sit in this. Like, I need to concentrate, meditate, regulate, facilitate all of the growth channels, right?
Yes.
And then they say, okay, I am a clear mind. I should start exercising. Okay. And then once they get those things, it looks like a chi, right? Like everything's aligned and balanced.
Yeah.
For me, because I was more a physical person and I was angry a lot, I needed to get out the physical anger inside of my body.
Yeah.
And I understood maybe my body more than I understood my mind. So my chart worked the opposite way, where you would attack your mind and then it would flow to your body as a result thereof. Mine worked opposite. I would attack my body and it would flow to my mind.
Yeah. Wow. That's like proving the point that, like, while these things can happen in certain ways, like it's based on who you are and how your life is proceeding, and recognizing that is difficult. But that's why sharing all of this is so good. And that's why vulnerability, going back to that, is so goddamn important. Like,
it is.
You can't really look at yourself fully until you're paying attention more broadly to your life. And that includes things that are happening external to you. There's a really, really popular quote that I'm going to butcher by, I forget who said this. It was a famous person. Maybe I'll look it up. I don't know. Basically, it was the idea, I think it was Da Vinci, Leonardo da Vinci. If you're not looking at nature to understand yourself, you're missing it. And and for me, my physical practice that started to help me process some of this was going for like runs or jogs. You know, I was just getting into it, but I'd go for these runs with Rye, and like I was in suburbia at the time in Virginia, and I just like zone out. But at a certain point, I started to like not zone out. I started just no music, just would run and just let my mind go. And I'd be staring at these like tree lines going down. Like I've said this to you so many times, like looking at nature, seeing like the reality of life outside of the context of myself started to like naturally spin those wheels. And that was possible because I was moving my body. And I've heard this many times that our body holds a lot of trauma and it holds a lot of our experience, and we don't recognize that. So when we don't see that mind body connection, which is true and so real. Like, again, this is wisdom. This is knowledge from like centuries before us, but we're just now coming back to it scientifically. When you realize that there's a connection there, and you can like cohere those things. I think that's how Joe Dispenza puts it. There's a certain degree of coherence. Like, it's profound what can start to take place. And again, it's happening not by trying and grasping, and like even the meditation and everything can be overdone because I did that. Like, that was a part of my journey. It was like, I was meditating every day, multiple times a day, reading all these books, taking all this stuff in, consuming. And I got exhausted. And at a certain point, again, in New York, hit the ground, and I couldn't do any of those things. And it wasn't until I sat through that and then took my dog out on a walk, every 5 to 6 hours, and just forced myself to move and to get out of my headspace physically. Yeah. It wasn't until then that I was able to like really start to see some of the deep stuff.
Yeah. So here's a question that I've been often wondering. So we're realizing that, like, as the men, like we're working on ourselves right now. You've realized that as a partner in a relationships that you are doing the work. Yeah. And because of that, there's a certain element of vulnerability that you're having within yourself, allowing yourself to feel these emotions and process them. Not just say, this is what happened, I'm angry because of it, now I know what it is, but actually sitting in that and saying, I need to deal with this shit no matter how bad it is. So when you're in a relationship, it's more complex, right? Because you have another partner that you're trying to be vulnerable with about your emotional and maybe sometimes physical state. Yeah. Like, what are your experiences in like trying to foster an environment where you both can be vulnerable about your pain and the hurt and the things that you've maybe went through or recently encountered?
Yeah. Well, because I experienced a divorce and like a couple pretty hard breakups, I kind of developed this practice where I've been like all about communication over the last 3 or 4 years. So for me, the struggle has been and still is, like, I'm actively learning this, which is clever of you to bring up, Mike. What I'm realizing is you can over communicate. You can try too hard when it comes to vulnerability. And like for me, it was a lack of trust in my partner that they could see it and that they were prioritizing it.
You hitting hard right now. This is heavy stuff right here.
And I realized, like, oh, that's the thing that I'm doing. And then when it's in the nitty gritty, I'm like, I'll be vulnerable. Like, here's all of my shit. Like, bleh, this is what I feel. And this is what I need from you. And this is how I'm feeling. And no, what I've discovered is that you can do that way too far. Like, you can go way too far with being vulnerable. Like, really, that's a manipulation tactic that I developed because for me, dude, I like as an empathetic person, like I feel the shit when the other person is going through it, and it brings me down. So then I selfishly am like, no. Like I've dealt with something like this, and this is where the cultural shit of being a man comes into play for me, where it's like, oh no, like I see what's going on here, and like I don't believe that person's actually, my partner's actually going to see it. So I'm going to say it. I'm going to put it out there, and then try and, like just support in that way. Like, here's the thing that's going on, and like, this is how it's affecting me. It doesn't work like that, dude. Like, no, the lack of trust thing is a huge, it was a huge defense mechanism that I've really struggled with because I've thought, like, passive aggressiveness, not a fan. Like, I don't want to go to bed angry. So to me, I'm prioritizing, let's just fix this shit, and rushing it and pushing too far when the other person is not ready. And there's this thing about this that I really like. My brother said this thing like a couple of years ago to me, when we were talking about actually our other brother, just like things that he was going through. And my brother Brand was like, essentially we were a little concerned about something, right? And we are like, it's not my mission. Like that's what he said. And he's like, it's not my mission. I'm like, oh, that actually really helps me. Like in a way,
Yeah.
we're all on this track of life. We're all experiencing me.
So true. Man.
We all say me. We're the self-experience. And if we see it that way, and if we say like, you know what, I can do it. Like I believe in myself. Then we must believe in the other person.
100%. I agree.
But that is a weird meta vulnerability that I have struggled with. Trusting the other person to understand, to like prioritize the looking.
Yeah. Well, I love that you said that, because it shows like you're breaking down some of those walls and dealing with I'll say we are breaking down those walls and dealing with our own insecurities.
Yeah.
The reason why I can't let you process the data that I just gave you, be it crap or whatever, or hard, or, however I was feeling, or feedback for you, is because I am not secure in myself.
Yeah.
If I were there, and I'm still working on this, people, then I wouldn't be so eager to get over to help you process. I'm just going to be like, you know what? And I think I'm finally at the point now where I'm like, okay, you disagree. I disagree. I'm okay with that. And I don't hate you. So there's that. What do you want for dinner?
I mean, it's we celebrate like diversity of perspectives, right?
Great.
That occurs in a relationship, and it's important that it does. Like for me in my present relationship. Oh my
God. Preach.
Dude, without the diversity of perspective between the two parties, like if we're the same person, we're the like mind, and we're just doing things and processing the exact same way, shit's going to break, because ultimately it's not like healthy to have too much of one thing. And that's another thing that I kind of struggle with, which is, like when you look so much, like, I mean, maybe there's some people who are listening who have done this. They're like, no, I get it. Self-awareness is great. Introspection is great. I've done therapy. I've done all this stuff. When you do that, there's this thing that can happen where you get a little prideful and you're like, oh, I've figured it out. Like, oh, I've transcended. I've figured it out. I'm a person that is aware, fully sentient being. And I fell into that category, and I can fall into that category easily. Yeah. And I think that's a result of like, being independent, and it's sort of a survival mindset thing. And I wanted to bring this to the fore. This is something that Dispenza talked about in this video you and I watched. Yeah. He was talking about these different nervous systems, like these different systems in our bodies that we're tapping into when things are happening, like that are bad. Like there's the parasympathetic nervous system and the sympathetic nervous system. And one and the other is associated with like survival versus what is it? Like thriving, like growing, like
growing. Yeah.
Yeah. So that whole thing, like I thought I was, I'm in the thriving mode, bro. Like, and then like, oh, my partner's struggling with something, and like it's kind of reminiscent of something that I've personally experienced. Like, oh, okay, here it is. Well, what you should do is just every single time, dude. That's what lends itself so well to breaking a relationship, and that's what lends so well to like you losing the relationship that you thought that you wanted. The thing the thing we've been talking about this whole time, which is like, like how do you find love? How do you find love? Well, you can't force it. That's it.
That's the thing. And then if we talk about like the vulnerability thing, and I think again, as men, I think it's important to talk about, right? Because there's a lot of factors that play in here for us. But if we talk about allowing the person to express how they feel and be vulnerable with us and tell us what they're happening, they're not looking for a friggin' solution, man. Like they're not looking for your response or an action.
No.
They just want you to hear them out, because even though we process stuff, like a lot of stuff internally, like a lot of people don't do that. Like they project it, they want people to like see and hear, and sometimes they just need to work it through by voicing it. That doesn't necessarily mean I want your opinion. I just kind of want you to listen.
That's the most frustrating thing ever, though, especially when the thing that they're concerned about or that's hurting them is like you, like when it has to do directly with me. That's when it's hardest, because I'm like,
okay,
no, but that wasn't the intention though. Let me explain the intention. Like it doesn't fucking matter, bro.
So
what matters is it happened.
Yep.
there's an emotional experience, and the other person is taking their time to process that emotional
Yeah.
experience.
And
And
also that is, it's not an attack on you.
no,
It
no,
is them being vulnerable and relaying how they feel in this moment.
yeah,
So you
yeah,
shouldn't be listening and preparing a response, because that's not active listening, is it?
no,
You shouldn't be listening and think about where they're attacking me or I need to like have a rebuttal. That's not active listening. If you're actively listening, you should be processing and
yep,
then possibly even repeating what was said, just so you understand the
yeah.
thought process or the action behind the words.
Yeah,
So,
totally.
yeah,
And that's incredibly difficult to do
it's hard.
if you're not aware of what's going on. And
Yeah,
something that I think is super important about all of this is, like, for me, it's been helpful to
yeah,
recognize that ultimately we are all shaped by our life experience. And
yep,
to own these things too much, for me to be like, I wasn't seeing that, and then to like
mhm,
kick myself for it, that's not
no,
helpful. Like, what's helpful
no,
is recognizing, why does that happen? And like,
yep,
why that happens is, to me, because we live in a world, in a society where there are certain ways of being that are out of balance. Like, there's this idea of the masculine and the feminine energies within a human experience.
yeah,
And to me, what that means is, like, the masculine energy, when it's weighing out the feminine energy, is
yeah,
I'm trying to solve problems. I'm trying to
mhm.
fix and make things happen, because I'm the one who's grounded in reality, and I can see it, and like XYZ, this is how we do it. But then
Yeah,
on the converse, if the feminine energy, like, of like expression and like feeling the feelings and things, that can also be out of weight. And so ultimately we have all these stimulants in society and in culture
yep,
that are making us confused about what that balance should even look or feel like for any of us. And ultimately it's going to be different for everybody. and
I agree.
and that's a matter of, like, us recognizing that those two things exist
Yeah.
within like a human experience. And that's a whole other topic, man. Like,
Yeah, it
I
definitely
don't know.
is. So if we're talking about the idea of like being vulnerable in a relationship, right? Now you're opening up this vulnerability thing with yourself and exploring the
Mhm.
depths of your soul and your emotions, right?
Yeah.
So now you're in a relationship with somebody and they have to learn how to do this same thing. So you
Hmm.
guys are on the same journey, but just on like completely different paths. How do you get that to a place where you're allowing each other this space to kind of facilitate growth and deal with hurt and pain and suffering and maybe some crap that your in-laws or parents did? How do you create that safe space?
I'm curious about that too. That's a great question. I'm actively trying to explore that right now. And to me, so
Okay.
far, some of the lessons learned have been just like like paying attention to the other person, giving the space and time. For me, it's not so much like asking questions all the time, like, oh, what
Yeah.
about this? How have you talked to so and so? Da da da. It's more
Yeah.
just like, how are you feeling? What do you need? How can I support you? As check-ins, that's really important. Like, it's not really, doesn't really require that much effort. I didn't realize that. I thought it
Mm.
did. I thought it was like,
Okay.
I see you hurting. I see you're exhausted. Like, what's up? Let's discuss that, as if I'm your therapist. And that's not it. That's not really it. Like, making the space is more like, it's more chill. I mean, really, it's easier. That's the funny thing to me, is that it's easier to recognize, like, okay, this person's this person's experience is happening. And just
Yeah.
because we are intimately connected and we constantly see each other and we do affect each other, does not mean that I need to attach to their emotional experience. And that
Okay.
can be extremely difficult. It's one of the hardest parts about love, in my opinion, is that if
Yeah.
you care so much about a person, like, and you are a compassionate individual who is paying attention and like really is giving it your all, like, it's just, to me, it's really hard not to see that and be like, damn, dude, like, I want to help you. And like, the
Uh-huh.
helping thing is ironically not helpful most of the time. And like, again, it's easier
It's
than
so
that.
true.
It's
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 so
almost like,
true.
dude, I'm curious about this. Honestly, it feels like, to a degree, I have to like ignore my
Ah,
feelings that are
oh
happening,
my
which
god.
like
Oh my god.
which like is this is a complicated one, because like
It
I
is. It's
I also
hard.
I also think that I've experienced this myself, when someone when my partner interacts with me
Mhm,
in a certain way and something's happening,
mhm.
and they say like, well, why do you feel that way? Like, that initiates a conversation that can be productive. And
Agreed.
like, what that can do is, they can be a mirror to help you
I
see
agree.
you know, the thing
Yeah.
that you're not seeing. But it's a fine line. Like there's a balance there because you can be a mirror or you can be like a television set that is blaring and saying like, this is
Yeah.
what's wrong. You are doing
Yeah.
this. You need to talk to
Right.
this person to resolve that. And like it honestly, I think it spoils the plot. That's
Yeah.
what I think about
I
it. Like
agree.
to a degree, like if we're going to learn, it's always going to be an inherent understanding. And you kind of
Mhm.
steal that and you make it take longer when
Oh
you try
my
and solve
god,
it for the
dude.
other person.
I agree. I agree. So one of the other things I want to say too is like you we talk about it a lot. Like we're trying to both get to that place where we're like completely open and honest about one's feeling. And you're
Mhm.
right. Like it is all vulnerability. Like you have to be trusting of yourself to not like completely blow your emotions all over somebody, like just
Yeah.
vomit them in a
Yeah.
word vomit even,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah.
And then I think you can start doing stuff that it becomes incredible once you do that. You've reached this vulnerability state, and it can be absolutely eye opening,
Mhm.
and it could elevate your relationship status. Even
Yeah.
the emotional waves and vibration that you feel regularly can be elevated to another level.
It
You
can.
can start doing things like doing manifestation practices together, and
Yeah.
that's like
That's
you're like, yeah,
powerful
that shit
shit.
blows your mind. It
Yeah.
definitely is,
Yeah,
man. Yeah.
because that catalyst, that spark that typically started arguments, which is a form of manifesting something. You're manifesting
100%.
energy right there.
Yeah.
That is converted ideally into a creative act that becomes something more powerful and more profound and meaningful than either person could do on their own. And I think that right there, that is the thing that
Huh.
is like the good, that's the intent that we're looking for within
Oh,
a
yeah.
working relationship. And but like something that I really liked again about what Joe Dispenza said was like, you're doing this either way. Like
Mhm.
you're either like putting out the energy in a way that is productive and creative and meaningful, or you're doing it in a way that is destructive and chaotic and disorderly. And
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 so true.
it doesn't like help. But again, the hardest part is like those emotions. Like how do
Mhm.
you interact with those? And to go back to your question, how do you make the space for your partner? I honestly think it goes right back to what we've been saying over and over again, which is you make the space for yourself. Like,
Yep.
dude, I got to tell you, I just realized yesterday, like sitting on the floor in the bathroom, crying, that what I had
That's
done
crazy.
was that I had neglected one singular part of my own
Mm,
personal practice of introspection,
okay.
and that was the like talking to my phone and listening back to it in a creative way. Like it's one of the weird things that works for my brain. I had stopped doing that because you know once I entered a new relationship, I'm sure
Yep.
this happens for a lot of people. You
It
get
does.
consumed by the experience and you forget yourself, and you get distracted by the novelty, and that's what happened to me. And I was like, shit, that seems really obvious now. And like upon like doing this once more, like yesterday, later on, I was just like, you know, I recorded my thoughts and feelings and realized like, oh, that's it. I'm creating a space for myself to vent
Yes.
and to like
Yes.
process out loud. And that's really what I'm trying to take from my partner when I'm experiencing their emotions with them. Like
Mhm.
that's the part that is so important.
I
And
agree.
like the Dispenza, like he inspired me to get back into this. I was like, dude, this talking to your future self thing, there's something to that, bro. And if I'm gonna put
100%.
out any like trademarked like Mike's idea, like it's not even my idea, but it's something I'm doing. Bonding with your future self. What do you think about that? When I say that, like, what does that sound like to you? What does that
Uh,
mean to you?
it sounds like it just sounds like I don't I like I'm honestly don't know. I can tell you that I've never really thought about it
Hmm.
in that sense. I thought about creating my future self and making the steps
Yeah.
to foster the and allow the space of the person that I would like to become
Mm.
or that I am becoming. But I've never actually thought about that's maybe
Yeah.
a practice that I need to take.
Well, I mean,
Yeah.
I think it's to me, it feels like it works for me to think about like this because what I'm realizing is like, okay, all right, the reason for all of this like contention and things is because I have this empathy drive that's very high, and
Hmm.
what I'm doing is I'm empathizing and then I'm, whatever, getting distracted. I'm not empathizing with myself. And taking that idea plus the idea within this idea of manifestation of feeling how you will feel, like training your brain, teasing your brain basically into feeling the way that you would like to feel by practice, by giving that space. That's the talking to yourself part, and that's the bonding with yourself part. So for me, what I mean by that is quite literally, I will start a recording and then pretend that I'm speaking to myself in the future. And I'll be like, yo, look, I'm feeling this way. Do you remember this? Like simply by pretending. It's this weird creative act that like forces me to process it as if I'm talking to a person. But then I can be like, what do you think about this now for you? Like in your now future Mike, what do you think about this? And then what happens is, at least for my brain, I get creative in that moment. And I'm like, what would I feel at that time about what I'm hearing right now? And weirdly, it's like a hack for me where I'm like, oh, you're probably laughing because you remember this and you realize how ridiculous it is years and years later. And you're probably like feeling really good because you've learned off of this situation. So the point is like, I think it's a funny way to like sort of trick your mind, but more than anything else, practice feeling what it might feel like to be in a space where you are able to provide space for your partner and you are able to do that for yourself. And then therefore create huge, meaningful things in the world if you want to, Yeah.
So I think that's definitely really cool. And I think by doing that, you've definitely found a way for you to be vulnerable with yourself and start the process of self-healing and self-realization. So we're going to wrap this one up. I think it's important though that you men out there, if you guys are listening, man, dude, like seriously, allow yourself the space to have this vulnerability time. You don't have to share it with anybody. No, like Mike and I are weird. We like sharing our crap, but make sure you take some time to kind of like look inward and allow yourself to be vulnerable and feel the things that you really want to feel, because your partner will benefit from it too. They really will. Yeah.
And ultimately that can be a tiny practice, like one small thing, do something. It does not have to be a big deal. Do what you are able to do. And most importantly, like reach out to other people, and us personally, we're interested in creating that space for anybody, for whoever we're interacting with. And hopefully this episode has been something like that. But if not, or maybe if there's more space that you're looking for, more interaction, like please reach out to us. You can find us on social media, the notKnown podcast, right, Mike? And
that's right.
The email. So we got an email as well, and we'd love to hear from you. The notKnownpodcast@gmail.com.
Or TikTok, Instagram, and all that stuff.
TikTok, Instagram, and also we're tossing around the idea right now. We're kind of in a growth mindset ourselves. We're tossing around the idea of creating an actual space, like a Discord or something of the sort, where we can start to coalesce with people and to have these conversations in real time. So if that's something you're interested in, let us know.
Let us know. Yeah.
We'd love to hear it.
Yeah. So until next time, I'm Mike.
I'm also Mike.
And we're the notKnown podcast. See you later.
See ya. Bye.
Peace.